Good evening and welcome to the 2018 Municipality and Mayoral Candidates Debate hosted by the Cornwall and Area Chamber of Commerce in association and partnership with YourTV. My name is Bill Hallman with Chorus Entertainment. I'll be your moderator for tonight's debate. Our debate will begin with an opening statement from each of our mayoral candidates, and the order of speaking has been predetermined. A random draw happened earlier tonight, and that's the order we'll go in. Following the opening statements, our panel will be posing a series of questions to the candidates, and each candidate will then offer an individual response, which will then be followed by a brief scrum. I would like to point out that tonight's questions were developed by our local media panel, and at this time, I would like to introduce them. We'll start from the far end of the table. We have Bill Kingston from Cornwall Newswatch, Nick Seabrook from Seaway News. We have Alan Hale from the Standard Freeholder and Todd Lyhu from the Chamber of Commerce. Please welcome them. Once the series of questions or prepared questions has been completed this evening, we will open the floor to questions from the public gathered here at the Cornwall Civic Complex. With that, I would like to invite our candidates to do their opening statements. And with our random draw, we will start with our incumbent mayor, Leslie O'Shaughnessy.
Thank you. Bonsoir. Good evening. I would like to begin by saying that it has been an honor and a privilege to have served as your mayor for the past 4 years. We have accomplished a lot, and we can't stop now. We must continue to solicit public input on issues that matters to the citizens of the City of Cornwall. We must continue to provide accountable, transparent municipal governance. We must continue to work on the arts and culture as a major economic and tourism generator. We must continue to work with council and administration to find efficiencies. And we must continue the work that has been done to improve the lives of our seniors. Over the past 4 years, I've had the opportunity to work with many groups and organizations on issues that are important to them. Our seniors, our veterans, the Francophone community, the Historical Society, the arts and culture community, to name a few, all have helped me understand that what leadership is all about. Leadership is about doing more listening than talking. Leadership is about respecting the opinions of others. On a regional focus, we have worked with our friends in Akwesasne to enter into an agreement to assume the ownership of the harbor lands. This agreement shows us that we can work together and may open future opportunities. We are working with another neighboring municipality to provide water and sewer to spur development that will certainly provide economic benefits to our local economy. During the past 2 years, Cornwall has chaired the Eastern Ontario Mayor's Caucus, which represents separated cities from Peterborough to Cornwall. We were successful in hosting the Ontario East Municipal Conference in September. This is the first time in over 20 years that this event has been held outside of Kingston. I can proudly say that Eastern Ontario no longer ends in Kingston. We have also co-chaired the Eastern Ontario Leadership Committee, which is working towards the implementation of an economic development strategic plan for Eastern Ontario. This plan was developed in conjunction with the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus and will provide a clear path to future prosperity to all of us in Eastern Ontario. My commitment to you this evening is to continue to move the city forward, and I can assure you that we will do it together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We invite our second candidate for mayor to come up to the podium for their opening remarks. Please welcome Councillor Bernadette Clement.
Bonsoir, good evening. Tonight I want to talk about opening up the windows of our city, to let in more sunshine, more fresh air, to bring in more growth, more prosperity, and to bring the true change that we so need. If you feel that things are just fine exactly as they are now, then you have other options than to vote for me. I want our community to be a place which attracts people to come and join us in making this the best possible place. Je veux qu'on attire plus de gens et plus d'investissements à notre ville. I want us to be proud of our own history. We are an industrious people. We have been through some tough times together, and we have come through. I ran for council in 2006 in part because I saw that we were then at a crossroads of change. Domtar had closed. You all remember this. 2006. I worried for my neighbor. He worked at Domtar and he lost his job. I worried for myself. I didn't know what the future of this city was going to look like. I had just bought a house. I had just entered my 40s. I was looking at the tax bill and I thought, what are we going to do without Domtar? We got it together, though. We were resilient, tough as we know how to be. We harnessed our energy and we found our new way. On a vraiment su comment faire face à ces défis. I want to speak about this document tonight. It's a small business, too big to ignore document from the Cornwall and Area Chamber of Commerce. It makes some major points like the lack of access to qualified workers. It identifies key infrastructure gaps, speaks to the rising cost of doing business. So we need to be talking about coordinating the development of educational opportunities for workers and attracting new ones. There are recommendations that need to be read and followed. You know how many plans we have and recommendations? We have them. It needs commitment. So we are back at another crossroads. We know that we have potential. We all sense that. We have an active senior community. We have younger folks who are ready to step up. These are times which call for us to once again harness the very best within ourselves with a new approach to municipal government, one which sees us reaching out to listen and to learn, and one which sees us as inspiring and leading. Merci.
Thank you, Councillor Clément. We get our next candidate up to the podium with her opening statements. Please welcome Nicole Spahich.
I'd like to thank all for coming out tonight. Je veux tous vous remercier pour avoir venu ce soir, parce que cette décision, c'est votre décision qui est très importante. I'm a security guard. I see a lot. I go on a lot of different sites. I work with the community police as much as with the OPP. So I see and I hear and I listen. And you know, there's a lot of taxpayers out there that are not happy. So I'll start with improving our infrastructure. We all know that we have gas tax return to the municipality for the infrastructure. Question is, the residents want to know where this money's going because they didn't see any change in the streets yet. Oh well. Then we move on to the next step is the center for a homeless or a group home or even Ontario housing. We should remove them off our streets. They're hungry. They need a place to sleep. Let's not keep them out there for this winter. With your help, I'm sure we can all do this. Next, we move on to the seniors. The seniors are very important. So if you're going to raise the tax again one more time, take a look and see where your seniors are. They were here before we were here. And you know, they're important. Now they're living on a fixed income. A lot of them can't go out and get a part-time job. So we're going to raise their tax and we're going to tell them we're going to give them a supplement. But you know, anytime you give something, we're taking 10 times more back. So is this fair to our seniors? I ask you the question. This is not all over the map. This is one step at a time. Now we're going to go with the young and adults. We're going to have them with a trade, which is great. A trade is fantastic. But what's the use of having a trade if we're going to hire from out of town? People say, shop local, because we need the business here. We need the money in this town. Fine, so we're going to have the money in this town. But then we're going to educate our young ones. Whether we send them to university, college, they don't have anything to fall back on because we're hiring from out of town. Now we're going to take a look at our parking meters. They're great, but then somebody told me today, another $50 fine for the parking meter. I suggest we put a scanner on the parking meters. This way, you use the meters, you pay for what you use. You have a credit card or you have PayPal. That's how you're going to pay it by phone. Should be no problem. To fill in our small store space, which are empty, There's another way we could do that. It's bring in more business. The Hospital Theatre has been there since 1976. We should not have to duplicate this with the Bank of Montreal. For that I say, we have to really pay attention to how many dollars we're going to be spending more dollars and what do we get in return. Hospital Theatre has been there since 1976 and has gone through many struggles. And it's just a repercussion of repeating what Bank of Montreal is going to offer you. Now,
Thank you, Ms. Spodge. Thank you. Thank you for your opening statement. I would like next to call up our final candidate for mayor. Please welcome to the podium, Councillor David Murphy.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Bonsoir, mesdames et messieurs. Bienvenue ici. And I'd like to thank the Cornwall Chamber of Commerce and our panelists for putting all of this together tonight. Who am I? I'm born and raised in Cornwall. I spent my childhood here. I'm a proud St. Joe's Panther alumnus who started working at Harvey's at 15 years old. And I've been working in the private industries since then. I've held management positions in those private industries. And with those management positions has come the experience to understand their struggles with high taxes. I'm a person who likes to consult, whether it's in person or if it's through social media, which is a great tool that we underutilize. We should use it. And I listen. When a $250,000 study for the traffic circle was proposed, you resoundingly told me no. And in a recorded vote, I was one of 7 that said no, we're not going to do this. I also listened just last night. You told me a resounding no about spending more taxpayers' hard-earned dollars on our spay and neuter program that's being proposed for the 2019 budget. I'm the only candidate that said no. We've reached enough into the taxpayers. And when it comes to the Arts Center, our Arts Center, we should have an Arts Center, but the arts community has to be invested. Much like the sports community did with the Benson Center, they banded together. They had one voice, and they created that gem that we have as the Benson Center. The arts community should be held accountable to do the same. They should also run the facility, much like the Cornwall Curling Club. It is a great model. It's worked for the Curling Club. They've reaped the rewards. The Arts Center is no different, in my opinion. No more city dollars to operate an Arts Center. The arts community is more than capable of making that a success. When it comes to taxation levels, I will never vote for a 5, 6, 7, or 8% tax increase. Yes, those were the numbers that were bandied about, and some councillors supported those numbers. I'm proud to say I never did, and I never would. When it comes to partnerships, thank you. When it comes to partnerships with SDNG and Akwesasne, and let's add the school boards to that. Let's partner, because a unified voice is a larger voice, and you can accomplish more when you go at federal and provincial infrastructure funding and investment as a group. A collective voice, a regional voice will be heard a lot better. Ladies and gentlemen, it's about commitment. I love my hometown. I have a lovely wife and a lovely daughter, and they are here tonight. And I am very proud and honored to have the opportunity to represent you. 2-term councillor. Now the next step is as your mayor. And I respectfully ask for your vote October 22nd. Mesdames et messieurs, le 22 octobre, votez David Murphy. Vote David Murphy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, candidates. We appreciate your opening remarks. With that, we're going to get started with our media panel. They have questions for you. Again, they should be directed to all of you, but one at a time, and then we can have a short scrum about that question, which time, after we have some debate, we'll move on to the next question. I would like to call on Todd Lahu, the Chamber of Commerce, for the first question.
Thanks very much. Thank you all for being here this evening. I'm going to pick on Bernadette for the first question, but I'd like to hear from you all on this. Our Cornwall Chamber of Commerce members have made it clear to us that they feel that tax rates, especially among commercial and industrial sectors, place too much of a burden on their bottom line. What plans do you have to mitigate these concerns to ensure local small business can remain viable?
I would love to stand up here and say that we should have 0% taxes, that we should cut taxes. Every one of us would love to be able to do that, but that would not be the truth. The truth is that we have to have viable municipal services. We have to have proper infrastructure to make sure that we're competitive. And when we're competitive, that's when we're attracting investment. And that's the best thing for small business. Now, the other thing about small business is you've given us a roadmap already. You want to be talking to us about what you need. So you've suggested an advisory committee. We need to listen to that. You've suggested that you need access to qualified skilled labor. We can assist with that. We can help coordinate around that. Identify the needs, identify the skills that are lacking. So we need to work more closely with small business. You've already identified what you need for us to do, and we need to step up.
Thank you very much. We'll move down the line and we'll ask the question. We'll get an answer from Ms. Spage.
Yes, well, I believe the small business should come into Cornwall.
Can you speak through your microphone, please?
Oh, here we go again. I believe we should have small business, but with the same token is, what are their tax going to be? We're closing businesses already because the tax is too high. So we have to go in between the mark and say, look, we want to keep you, but what can you afford? They can't afford much. We have already storekeepers, and pay attention. They're saying that the only reason they're losing business is because our parking meters, they run out of time, and we give them a ticket for $50. That's why I suggest that if we can keep our business in Cornwall with just the meters alone, a scanner, we've already got half the battle. And then let's work on the other one and bring in business with the factories. For that, I thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll move to David Councillor Murphy.
Thank you very much for the question, Todd. And I've always maintained we don't have a revenue problem in the city of Cornwall. We have an expenditure problem. We do collect enough taxes, and a 0% is not feasible. I'll stand up here and admit that. 1.5% to 2.5% is palpable. It's still not the greatest, but I can get by with that. We have to ask ourselves, what business are we in? And friends, you have to ask yourselves that. What business is the city of Cornwall in? Are we in the business of private-public partnerships? Apparently we are. Should we be? I don't think so. Are we in the business of being all things to all people? We can't be. That is not sustainable. We need to find efficiencies, continue to find efficiencies. Administration has started that. We need to move it up a step. We need to go further than that. And that's how small businesses will benefit. And as far as attracting investment, there are jobs here. We need to fill them. We need to bring people. The jobs are here. Now it's time for the people to be brought here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Final point to you, Mayor O'Shaughnessy.
Thank you, Bill. When we're talking taxation, do we look at the overall budget of the city of Cornwall? Then therefore that budget is broken down. We receive from MPACT the values of property. Based on those values of properties, we are mandated to pass on the taxes accordingly. We have to use them. If you take a look at this year, you had about a 3.71 increase in residential properties. You did not have the same level of increase in the commercial. Basically, that is because of a shift that occurs. If we were to lower or reduce the commercial taxes even more, that again would revert onto the residential. We also had the problem this year with impact and the loss of assessment from the commercial assessment. All of them are appealing their taxes, are appealing their assessment, and their taxes are being reduced. In that sector, that now shifts to the remaining properties within that sector. So there's no easy answer, but I can assure you every opportunity to reduce the number that we pass on is done annually. You've seen this year where the actual budget took until May, and that was to look for savings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's your time. Thank you. We do have about 3 minutes to discuss this further, so I open it up to our candidates.
So the best thing would be to make sure that we are providing proper value for the tax dollar. That's where we need to have more confidence. We're not doing the scheduled audits of our departments as we have been in the past. So if we were to do that, we would be able to say with more confidence to the people that you're getting the bang for your buck. The bang for your tax buck. And that's where we've dropped the ball, is that we need to be more confident in explaining how it is that those services are efficient. And maybe those audits will tell us that they're not. But we need to be doing that. We need to get back on track with auditing our own departments so that we can confidently say to taxpayers, that's what you're getting. You're getting a good bang for your tax dollar. This is where we need to go. And small businesses, you are not well served if we have our roads bumpy and investors are driving on through the city because we're not keeping up with inflation and with our infrastructure.
Thank you.
That's a little bit of a cop-out, too, to say that we're not investing in infrastructure, because our infrastructure spending continues to climb. And I'm okay with that. It has been that way. And what we have to ask ourselves, again, what businesses are we in? What services does the municipality need to provide? There are efficiencies we can find. And as a council, some motions have been made and they've been defeated. We move on, but I'll bring those motions back as a mayor. I'll gladly step down from the chair and have this conversation at budget time, because it's a conversation we need to have. Not only have the residents had enough of digging in their pockets, the businesses can't sustain it. They really can't. We got a 30% vacancy rate for commercial business. That's unacceptable. We have an opportunity.
It's not a cop-out, Councillor Murphy.
We have an
It's not a
opportunity
cop-out.
here.
What's our
grow.
backlog in terms of water mains? What's our backlog? I think the public knows that we have a backlog.
We do, but we were
Well,
also
that's- but
told
that's
if we
what-
throw $40 million
that's what
at it, we
tax
still
dollars
can't
do.
fix it. Even if we threw $40 million at it, you still couldn't fix the problem because we were told we couldn't do it.
Ms. Spahn, you have a point you want to make?
Yes, I have. What are we doing with these tax dollars?
In the
that we're
microphone,
getting back?
please.
What are we doing with the tax dollars that you're getting back for the gas? You get gas tax rebate for the infrastructure. What's happening to
Infrastructure,
that money?
asphalt resurfacing, roads, buses, transit,
So what's
collects a lot of
happening?
that.
So what's happening to the last amount that we've collected already?
From the federal gas tax,
That's right.
it goes back into asphalt resurfacing, infrastructure spending, transit.
Is it always the same street that we're working on, or is it different streets? I'm just a question here, because you know what? Careful here, careful, careful. Careful, because you know, if you pay attention, Brookdale has a beautiful street. Bike trail, beautiful.
Last point to Mayor O'Shaughnessy.
But I really don't know where to begin.
Well, do what you can in 15 seconds.
Well, you know, the thing is, nobody likes taxes. I don't like taxes. You don't like taxes. Nobody likes taxes. But then again, is that the municipality has an obligation to provide services. Most of the services that we provide in our spending is mandated, not something that we have jurisdiction over. But certainly, efficiencies, we are always looking for efficiencies. When somebody is let go, that position is reviewed to see if it to be replaced. And we have lost employees over the last year. That will continue as vacancies become available and as they're reviewed by administration.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, panel, for that. The answers on those questions. We're going to go down the panel. We're going to ask Alan Hale, the standard freeholder, for our next question.
Hello, candidates. At some point during this next term of council, the federal government is going to start selling lands along Cornwall's waterfront. Putting aside the fact that you won't be able to have your way, but if you could, how would you see the city handle that situation, and what should those lands be used for after the city acquires them?
Is that directed at anyone in particular?
I'll start with you, Dave.
Okay.
Councilor Murphy.
Thank you very much for the question, Alan. Friends, what we have to consider here is if we don't control the land, we don't have a say in what goes there. And the federal government is putting it for sale. Can we afford to pay market value for it? No, the federal government knows this. This is why we have to work with our federal partners through our MP Guy Lozon, who is a willing partner to go to Ottawa. And maybe in my strategy would be to have a long-term investment, like a lease to own, a 30 to 50-year lease to own, which would make it very palpable for the community to absorb that. But again, understanding if we don't own it, we do not have a say in what goes there. And the tanks are a great example of that. Nobody's happy with the tanks. But here we have an opportunity to talk to the federal government, and let's have the discussion to acquire those lands. It's vital we do acquire them, but we can't just throw money at it because that is not going to be feasible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Mayor O'Shaughnessy, to you.
Well, really, that statement's incorrect because we do control the lands. The City of Cornwall has just completed the official plan, which designates those pieces of property for specific uses, and a lot of it is open space and parkland. The comprehensive zoning bylaw, which will begin probably within the next 3 or 4 months, will now attach a zoning to those properties. They have been clearly identified within the official plan. If anybody purchases those lands, they must be abiding by the official plan of the City of Cornwall and with the corresponding bylaws or zoning bylaws that correspond to that property. So to say that we don't control the land, and by the way, the opportunity for appeal to the OMB board is gone.
All right, thank you. Councilor Bernadette. Clément.
I'm surprised by Councillor Murphy's answer. That's not what I heard him say when this first issue came up. So the issue of waterfront lands is about political leadership. It is about the fact that we can't afford to pay top dollar for that land. So it's what we do in terms of meeting with not just our MP. We need to go to the cabinet on this. We need to go to ministers on this and have some political discussion around what is owed to our community around that waterfront. I think the best success would be to develop the port lands that we already co-own with Akwesasne. If we can show the province, the country, the world what we can do in partnership with Akwesasne, that's what's going to get us more leverage in terms of the waterfront. That's what's going to allow us to control our destiny and show what we can do as a community.
Thank you very much. Ms. Spahich, your comments?
Well, I believe in the waterfront, providing you can afford it. You see, today, there's always a want. And then you got to figure out, is there a need and can you afford it? So when you answer those three questions, answer them and answer them honestly. So now you're going to have a partnership. Well, you know, it's nice to have a partnership with the waterfront, but what are your guarantee that, hey, it's not working for me and I'm going to blame somebody else on this? Well, it doesn't work like that. You see, if you want to buy the waterfront, it's great, but we don't have the money, we can't afford it. So let's find out where you're going to have the money without having the taxpayers pay for it. For that, I thank you.
I'm not quite,
Thank you. We have 3 minutes for a scrum. Please,
I'm not
Mr. Mayor.
quite sure where Councillor Clement and Councillor Murphy are coming from in regards to the port lands. It has been clearly identified by the City of Cornwall with the federal government on numerous occasions. I think the Waterfront Development Committee is well aware of that also, to our interest in those lands. Those lands, some of them may be very well contaminated, and the cost to clean up or them to be able to be used for any useful purpose may be very slim. They also talked about the structure of the canal. If we assume the liability for that canal, anything on a go-forward basis, it will be the responsibility of the City of Cornwall.
Yeah, but the reality-
What should be protected in the City of Cornwall is from Point Moline to the Customs Building. As far as I'm concerned, the City of Cornwall will take every effort possible, including the expenditure of dollars, to acquire those lands.
And then why are we left out of the conversation when it comes to talking to the federal government about these lands? Private investors are going to the federal government to build condos on our waterfront. And then council hears about it.
They went and got, anybody can go to the federal government and ask them for a piece of land. Anybody can do that. That person right there in the front row can go to the federal government and say, I'm interested in those lands. There's nothing we can do as a municipality to stop that, Dave, and you know that.
Mr. Mayor, we have co-owned those lands with Akwesasne for 2 years now. We
You sit on the
co-own
committee.
them. Yes.
And that file has not
And we
moved in
need
2
to
years.
Move forward.
And you sit on that committee.
And
That
we
file
need
hasn't
to
moved.
move forward. And you know what? There's only one mayor at a time, Mr. Mayor. I can sit on a committee, but I'm not the mayor. There's one mayor at a time, and we have not moved on that file in the last 2 years.
And with all due respect to my colleague, my waterfront vision has not changed. You can check it out on May 1st when I announced. I proposed it then and I propose it now. It's the same thing I said
I'm
tonight.
talking about your top dollar comment.
Well, I've always said we shouldn't pay top dollar for it.
Ms. Spahich, we have a few moments if you want to
Again,
weigh in.
like I said, it's great to have partners, but then what are partners if they don't hold their end of the bargain? So this is what I believe in. If you want it and you can afford it, then go buy it. And yes, Mr. Murphy here, if he wants to buy the land with rent to own, that may not be a bad idea. But then again, Mr. Murphy, you should get it in writing, because if we don't have it in writing, nothing is important. So if you can go and you say, I want to rent to own the waterfront for I don't know how many years you're planning to, and you get it in writing, then go for it. But make sure that the taxpayers can afford it.
And by the
That
way,
I think
going
it-
after at a regional approach as well, we talk about just Akwesasne. Let's include SD&G in that conversation as well. Sure, they're not directly tied to the waterfront, but a more, again, talk about a unified voice going to Parliament Hill and the federal government saying, this is what our region wants. It's worked for Kingston and the greater Kingston area. It's worked for Belleville, Quinte. Let's make it work for Cornwall and SD&G and Akwesasne as well. We have to build those partnerships back up to where they need to be.
Dave, the
Sorry,
lands
thank
that are
you.
to be
Sorry,
sold
Mr.
are
Mayor,
being
thank
done
you.
by policy of the federal government,
We have-
and that's for everybody.
We have to move on. I thank you very much for your comments on that question. And we're going to move on to our next question. I call on Nick Seabrook of the Seaway News to ask his question.
Hello, everyone. I'll be directing my question to Mayor O'Shaughnessy. Mayor O'Shaughnessy, would a ward system create better local representation while reducing the size of council? Would you commit to holding a referendum on introducing a ward system next term?
No, I wouldn't commit at this time because the feedback that I'm getting from the public. In March of this year, it was brought to council. It was explained the process to all of the council members, the deadlines on when it would be brought to council, and when it would have to be done by to have it put onto the ballot as a referendum. That was both for the size of council, and it was also in regards to the ward system. Nobody approached administration, myself. None of the 10 councillors came forward to have it brought forward as a vote from council. The people that I spoke to, or whatever, the people that I run into, the people meet in the grocery stores, I'd ask them the question, and they feel more confident that they can actually go home and call 10 people rather than calling and depending on one person within their ward. If you go back when we left the ward system back in, I think, 1974, it was for that exact same reason.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate it. We'll move to Councillor Clement on this.
I would commit to raising that at the council table. I think that we should have that discussion. I've been hearing about that, particularly in the last year, in terms of people wanting to talk about the ward system. I also think that discussions about the ward system increasing in the last year is a symptom of a larger problem. I think people are feeling disengaged, right? So when they're feeling disengaged and they don't know which councillor or which council to go and approach, it's because they're feeling like it's too big and we've lost contact with them. So we need to improve the way that we communicate with people, have people respond more quickly to people. So in the meantime, let's do something about that symptom. And yeah, next term, let's talk about the size of Cornwall Council and about the ward system.
Thank you very much. Ward system to you, Ms. Bodge.
I see for years we've been doing the talk. And the talk is great, but the walk wasn't delivered. Now the thing is, I believe Mr. Mark McDonald, councillor, has been talking for years to reduce the councillors down from 10 to 6. Well, you know, if you have 10 or you have 6, it really is not going to really matter because the 6 is going to pay attention and the 10 is going to be just fooling around, playing around with pulling the string. Now, if you have 6 councillors, they will work hard for you because you know why? They want you to vote them back in 4 years.
Into your microphone, please, Ms. Bodge.
Oh.
We just can't hear you.
Oops.
You have 20 seconds to finish your remark.
Okay. So again, 6 councillors, remove 4. The money you'll be saving, the 6 councillors will work harder for you than your 10. Pay attention. They will work because they want that election to be in 4 years, you vote them back in. And that's the only reason they're going to vote.
Thank you very much. The ward system to you, Councillor Murphy.
Thank you very much for the question, Nick. And basically, let's put it back to the people. Friends, you are the ones that should be making the decisions ultimately, so let's have that referendum on the ward system. And if you decide to go that way, my plan would be to go to 5 wards, maybe 6, and then 2 or 3 councillors at large, so that protectionism that a ward system sometimes some people feel it creates wouldn't necessarily be there. You've had those 2 or 3 councillors that would help mitigate that. So you go 5 or 6 wards, one rep per, and then 2 or 3, and that reduces council down to 8. And I'm all for less government, not more red tape. The further we can cut the government and red tape, I'm all for it. Thank you very much.
Dave and Bernadette, you both had the opportunity in March and February of this year to do what you say you're going to do in the next 4 years.
I wasn't door knocking.
Why did you not bring it forward? Why did you not bring it forward when you had the opportunity?
Actually, I did speak about the size of council. I thought that we should reduce the size of council.
Then,
and I
then
talked
you have
about,
to make a motion. You can't just
well, you
talk
know what?
about it.
We were in a very long budget process that was taking months, and at that point, we just wanted to get it done. So no, but I did publicly stand up and talk about the size of council. And by the way, this talk of wards has really taken up room in the last few months. That's where people are starting to feel disengaged, I believe, and that's what we need to be addressing. We can talk about wards and we can do public consultation and we can have all kinds of plans, But in the meantime, we need to resolve the problem of people not feeling heard by this council and by the municipality. That's what we need to be working on now.
Ms. Bodge, on the ward system.
On the ward system?
Into the mic.
On the ward system, I believe you should go that way. Because you know what? Everyone that's in charge of that ward will be responsible for your area. We'll give you back the answers and the feedback you need without having a long waiting list. It's sad when you have to wait 2-3 months and still not get a reply. It's sad. But the thing is, council had a chance to bring it to the mayor, to have a motion, have someone second it, and put it to a vote with a recorded vote, and we wouldn't have this issue or talk about it now. We'd have 6 councillors, and they'd all be awarded to a ward. For that, I thank you.
Councilor Murphy, before you answer, there's going to be an added cost to this, no doubt, if we go to the ward system, and there's going to be added cost. That's a guarantee. Is that something you would support, added cost to an election?
It depends how it's made up, and let's get the report first before we decide whether or not it's an added cost, but a long-term saving. Short-term spending for long-term saving is wise investment. That's how business operates, and that's how we should operate as well. And with that said, when it comes to March, it was, again, I will agree with Councillor Clement on that, it was a long and sometimes dragged out budget process, more than it needed to be, and that's unfortunate because it did distract from other issues. And I didn't hear anybody talk about the ward system in March. I'm not sure what doors you're knocking on, Mr. Mayor, but the ones I'm knocking on are telling me the ward system is a good idea, so I'm listening. And they're telling me now, so I will listen to that.
30 seconds.
And as you should. And that's why we do go door knocking, is to listen. And I'm glad you said that, because often we get carried away and do more talking than we do listening. But one thing I want to go back to you, and when you had mentioned additional cost, the additional cost of having a referendum is not significant. You may be talking $20,000, $30,000, which is not a significant amount of money in a $170 million budget. But what we have to determine is, first of all, is the willingness there? We hear the people that are vocal, and I've heard them, and I think there's a few in this audience have even mentioned it to me. But when I ask the question out in the public, I don't get the same response. You have now North Glengarry that has on the ballot to remove the ward system. So, if that's what the people want, but there should be a clear indication before we do anything that is what they're looking for.
Thank you, Mr.
We
Mayor.
need to
Appreciate it.
respond to residents.
Thank you for your comments on that question. We will move down the table. Our next question comes from Bill Kingston, the Cornwall News Watch.
In this, thank you, Bill, and this question is directed to the incumbent, Leslie O'Shaughnessy. There was talk in the last administration of having a regional approach and being good SD&G neighbors. But in the last 4 years, we've seen lack of regional cooperation on some big files. Tourism was split in two. A deal between South Glengarry and the city of Cornwall that's over 2 years in the making for water still hasn't been signed. Port lands with Akwesasne are cleared for development, but no vision or plan has been made public. And now a regional airport where at least one possible regional partner, the United Counties, has said no deal. How do you plan to bring any meaningful change to regional cooperation, or are we better off just to concentrate on the city's development by ourselves?
First of all, we'll discuss it in regards to the water and the sewer that would go along Boundary Road. If you remember, the previous council had turned it down. This council has agreed to move forward with that. We had a meeting in August with South Glengarry. There are the discussions where the concern is in costing. It's our responsibility to ensure that if we're going to sell services to a neighboring municipality, that City of Cornwall is reimbursed, not only for capital, but also for the production of the water. Certainly, they're going to try to get the best deal that they can possibly get, but then again, we are still negotiating. If you're talking about the lands of Akwesasne, the lands in Akwesasne, the port lands that are here that we are in agreement with Akwesasne, there has been no drive by Akwesasne to move forward quickly. They are doing their homework on what they want to see occur on those lands. You also have the election in Akwesasne that occurred in June. We also have this election. So I have been talking to Chief Benedict about moving this file forward for quite some time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And it will occur.
Thank you.
I'm sorry I didn't get to the airport and to the...
Councillor Clement.
It's a big question. Regional approach and shared agreements, That's difficult for all regions, by the way. This is not an easy thing even for our region. We're not unusual. The first thing that I would do if I were mayor was I would meet with elected officials. I would meet with them. I would ask them to come break bread with us as council. We don't meet. We don't sit down and have a meal together. This is the basis for all kinds of discussions. So that's the first thing that I would do, is sit down and meet and itemize those issues that you raise in your question. The tourism file, the deal for the water. I mean, we need to meet our elected officials on a regular basis, but that's the simple answer. I would just start, break bread, let's talk. We haven't done that in 4 years at least, if not longer.
Thank you, Councillor Clement. Ms. Spahich.
Well, a comment to Mrs. Bernadette Clement. 4 years is a long time to try to partner with someone, especially when there's a lot of money involved. So let's take a look at your tourism. 4 years to partner with someone, that's a long time. The waterfront, the water, where they're going to share the water system. Still, we're not too sure with the boundary, but then you're looking at another 4 years. The Portland with, again, and then you have the airport. Don't you think that's a little spread thin and not getting any results anywhere? Shouldn't you just be working on one project and accomplishing it? I say stop partnering and do it on your own, and you'll see you'll get it further and be further ahead and take that responsibility without blaming anyone. For that, I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Spahich. Councillor Murphy.
Thank you very much. It's pretty hard to build a relationship with outside groups or outside individuals when you got a fractured relationship within your own house. This council, unfortunately, has been fractured, and it's very difficult to get on the same page with our neighbors whenever that happens. But with that said, a community approach, a growth approach with the entire region. Again, we're not reinventing the wheel here. It's happened all over the province, and they've been told to do it, and they've made it work. We haven't been told yet to do it, so let's do it before we are told, so we understand where we're going and get that same vision. And the relationship with the counties, as much as some would think it is all good, they put out a map that doesn't even have Cornwall on it. They don't even have the bridge on it. There's no way to get over to the U.S. side or Akwesasne based on their map. That's how upset they are. But we need to rebuild that relationship because it can be there. It's been strong in the past. When I was a reporter, we had a strong relationship with the counties. I think we can get there again. And as your mayor, I would definitely work to do that. I have pretty good ties to the counties as well.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy.
Dave,
It's open for discussion.
Dave, I don't understand where you're actually coming from when you say there's no relationship, and even Bernadette, with the United Counties. I know these individuals. I know them all. When you're talking about, well, we'll sit down and we'll break bread. Why did the counties of SD&G leave tourism? Do you know the reason why? They left to establish their own identity. The United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry are always referred to as a neighbor of Cornwall. They have never. If you notice that even their marketing, they went through rebranding where Ontario began. They are trying to find their own identity. Prior to tourism leaving the City of Cornwall and the counties as a joint venture, there were issues that were discussed between our administration, myself, the warden, and their administrator in regards to governance. They felt that there was the governance issue. You also had the fact is that they were renting, the tourism was renting the jail. They moved out in 2 weeks without giving notice to the United Counties. So there's a lot of things that happened over that time, but the main reason, and it's continuing today in their discussions with everything, they're searching for their own identity and branding, and you want to know what? They will succeed.
Identity is important, Mr. Mayor, but last year saw us having published letters from you and from another mayor, dueling letters in the media.
That was cool.
And this was not a good thing for a relationship between counties. I'm going to agree with Councillor Murphy on this. We're a fractured council, and it didn't help. It makes it more difficult. But we only met whenever there was a crisis or an issue. We need to meet on a more regular basis. Yes, we know these people. Of course we know them. We're part of this region. We all know each other. But we need to sit down regularly, set out an agenda, set out some common priorities, and move forward.
Councillor Murphy?
And it's difficult to do that. It's difficult to do that when one side constantly doesn't like the way the conversation is going and gets up from the table. We have to have thicker skin around the table. Are they going to say things we don't like? Probably. We're going to do the same thing. But you have a conversation like adults and talk it out. You don't walk home with your ball and not want to play anymore. You have to be able to work together.
Ms. Spahich.
I have a question to all of you. Is there a problem that we're not self-sufficient enough, that we can do everything on our own, that we have to partner with one and partner with the other in order to make some wave line? Or is it that we just don't have it together, and that's why we're having a problem? Because you see, it doesn't matter if you're going to develop things in 3 years or 4 years or 10 years. What is happening now is the now that counts, and that's what we want to know. We're all sitting here today because we want to know where we're going tomorrow, the next day. Where are we going with all these projects? Well, I have the project for you in 4 years. Are you interested? No. 2 years will be yours. No? Okay, well, fine. I'll just have to find someone else to do it. It doesn't work like that. Let's see if you can do it on your own, and if you can do it, all the more power to you. For that, I thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. That will end our questioning. Candidates, thank you so much. We have more to throw at you in just a few moments. And I thank our panel of media for the questions. We are going to take just a quick break and reconvene here, get some water, and get back to our all mayoral candidates debate 2018 with the Chamber of Commerce here in Cornwall in just a moment. And thank you so much. Welcome back to our 2018 mayoral debate for the City of Cornwall, presented by the Chamber of Commerce of Cornwall and presented by YourTV. Once again, my name is Bill Holman. I am your moderator tonight, and as we had a few moments to stretch our legs, not only the audience but our candidates, we are coming back to another round of questioning from our media panel. I would ask for quiet in the room, please. As we get going again. And I will, quiet please. Quiet please. And thank you very much. We're going to continue the questioning. I'm really encouraged by the debate that we've been having. Obviously, we're going to have lots of differences of opinion, and I think that's fantastic for everybody in the audience, not only here at the Civic Complex, but for all our viewers who are watching throughout Cornwall and area. So again, thank you to the candidates for the great debate. Let's keep it going. I will turn things back over to Todd Lyhu of the Chamber of Commerce for our next question.
Thank you. I have a question that's centered on some news that's being made across our country right now. By January 22nd, new city councils elected this month will have to decide if their community should opt in or opt out of allowing cannabis shops within their borders. Would you support seeing Cornwall opt in or out to allow cannabis shops in our city, and why? And I'd like to direct this at Councillor Murphy.
Thank you very much. And if I were to tell you that we have a legally licensed substance that is heavily regulated, that could be addictive, but does have its merits, and that we collect taxes from the sale of, the province does, well, what would I be talking about? Alcohol, tobacco. Why is marijuana any different? So, my opinion, we should have the opportunity, we should opt into it, because it is no different. Should there be regulations? Of course, but there are regulations on alcohol and tobacco as well. And because it's going to happen. And let's take the tax revenue, job growth, tax revenue, because it's going to be a business that's ready to set up. And there are business people in this community ready to drop the funding and invest in our community to grow that business. Pardon the pun.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Mayor O'Shaughnessy.
Thank you. January 22nd is the date. October 17th of this month is when it goes for sale on the internet. So anybody that wants to purchase cannabis, it is available to us. So when we're talking about this, about opting in or opting out, if a municipality opts in, right, we have no control over licensing. They can license 400 people in the city of Cornwall to sell marijuana. You can have it on every street corner, and there is nothing the municipality can do. We also have the option of opting out. But if we opt out until we know all of the rules, all of the regulations, we can always opt back in. We can have public meetings to find out what the people of Cornwall are. We talk about always going back and trying to find out what the people want. You've mentioned that a couple of times, but automatically on something as serious as cannabis, which is not under the gaming and alcohol, it's under the tobacco laws.
Thank you, Mr.
So a
Mayor.
guy can smoke marijuana walking down the
Thank you,
street,
Mr.
in the
Mayor.
parks, anywhere they want.
That's your time. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Councillor Clement.
Our country is doing a big thing, this legalization of marijuana, and I believe that we can handle it. It does mean, though, that there's a responsibility in the provinces and on municipalities. I hear, but we haven't met, but I hear that in the region, other counties are looking to opt in. So of course we should be doing the same. It makes no sense for our neighbors to opt in and we opt out. It just drives good business away from Cornwall. So of course we should be opting in. The other thing I want to say though is I sit on the board of the Eastern Ontario Health Unit, and cannabis, while legal, may not always be healthy for everyone. So we need to keep that into consideration. The health unit has mapped out locations, optimal number of stores that can exist in Cornwall. I think we need to be in close touch with the Eastern Ontario Health Unit and look at that document and work with them in order to determine what best suits our community, where these stores should be located, parks, proximity to parks and schools. All of these things are municipal considerations. The health unit can help.
Thank you, Councillor Clement. Ms. Spahich.
Well, I believe that we should opt in. For the simple reason is we've got some space and we can rent it out. So the thing is, they get their proper license. Whether they buy it from community of Cornwall or they go to the next town, they're going to still be buying their marijuana. So let's say, hop in, make your money, and supervise what you have. For that, I thank you.
All right.
Let me tell you.
Go ahead, Councillor Murphy.
Let me tell you a very quick story. I used to be staunchly against the use of marijuana, and I've never done it. But I have friends that have, and I turned my idea about marijuana and what it can do, turned when my mother got sick with cancer and used medicinal marijuana. She'd never used before either, but it was like a miracle. Her temperament totally changed. She was at ease for the final 6 months of her life. That changed my mind on medicinal marijuana. Since then, I've learned a little bit more about it. Again, when you compare it with alcohol and tobacco and the addictive effects of those as well, those are legal entities. This is a legal entity. There's no difference. There is really no difference when it comes. Now, should we regulate where it's used? Of course we should. It should not be used in public places, only where you're allowed to legally smoke. You should be able to consume marijuana the same way then. And that's okay. And again, it's become a big issue on this campaign trail. People I'm talking to want to know if we're opting in or out. I just had 3 conversations tonight about it.
Opting in is fine, and I think that's definitely where we're going to go, but we need to keep asking questions. This is a complex issue. It doesn't hurt to ask questions, to stay in touch with the province. It's an evolving file. What's happening with the online? How is that delivery going to take place? So our job as a municipality is to keep asking those questions, to make sure that we get this right, to keep working with our partners to make sure that we get this right.
But I don't. Why would you opt in and then ask questions? Why would you not stay out? Because you can opt in, back in at any time.
And
give the answers to your questions.
There are a lot of good business
Get the
people,
answer
Mr.
from the
Mayor, who
people in
want
here.
to
They're
open
ready to
doors.
drop money in our
We've
community.
I've seen people in this room, when you mentioned about opting in, shaking their heads no. Where is their voice to be heard? You had mentioned earlier the importance of talking to the people, about getting the answers from the people, but then you've automatically assumed that the people are in favor of
That's why I'm talking
of
about the health
marijuana.
unit. That's why I'm talking about balance in the health unit. There's business, and this province has decided that we're going to have local stores. That's part of this business plan. Well,
Yeah.
we need to move forward with that.
But I'm
and
not
we also need
opposed
to
to
work with the health
opting.
unit.
I'm not opposed to opting in.
Well, it
but
doesn't sound
before
like
I
that's what
do
you're
that,
saying.
I have to understand what we're opting into.
And in the meantime, our neighbors are gonna have
You
their
know
vote.
yourself, we've still not got all the information from the province of Ontario. We received some earlier last week that says it's now under the Tobacco Act as opposed to the Liquor Act. That means anybody can walk down the street and smoke a joint. That's fine. If that's okay with you, that's fine.
They do it
But
now.
then again, we also
That's-
have to address the
that
issues
is
in our
not what we're
parks
saying,
and
Mr.
everybody
Mayor.
else.
That is not what I'm saying.
Ms. Spahich, do you have another comment? We have 30 seconds.
The question is, every time something comes by, we're not too sure what we want to do. And it goes by and somebody else takes it over. So now we have an opportunity. You either want marijuana or you don't. This is your choice, it's your voice. Now, if you don't go with it, your neighbor's going to go with it, and they're going to go buy it over there, come back and stir you up, and you know you're going to deal with it. Where you're going to have it in your municipality, you'll deal with it, and you'll understand better what's going on. For that, I thank you.
A polarizing question for our panel. Thank you so much for your answers on that. We're going to move on to our next question. Move down the line. We'll ask Alan Hale of the Standard Freeholder for the next question.
This one is for Nicole.
Yes.
So Cornwall still has a fairly newish long-term financial plan. It's designed in part to prevent an infrastructure crisis several years from now. But it also helped contribute to the large tax increase this year. So my question for you and your fellow candidates is, how important do you think it is to stick to that plan? Or is it better to sorry.
That's all right.
Is it better to find some wiggle room to not follow its guidelines when it means keeping the taxes down, or is it better to stick to the city's guns, and even if it means some short-term pain?
Well, we're not going to be going to the short term. We're not going to be going to the short term. We do have a responsibility to our residents in Cornwall, number one. And number two, the infrastructure has been put off for too many years. Being said and done, we're collecting enough money, and then we always have the gas tax coming back. So the question is, to me, where do we go to raise more tax just to supplement another infrastructure where we don't know where we're going? We should still have plans in place in order to take care of that, but I don't see any. So the day I see some, then I'll work with that, because it can't be 4 years from now or 10 years. We need it now. For that, I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Spahich, for your answer. We move to Councillor Murphy.
Thank you very much for the question, Alan. And the long-term financial plan is like any other document we receive. It's not static. It can't be static. Our priorities of today are not necessarily our priorities next year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years from now. They may change. Infrastructure-wise, yes, they'll always be a priority, but where in infrastructure? And so with that said, we have to constantly review the plan, as we should with all other plans. Our bike pedestrian master plan was 10 years old. Before that, we had an archaic plan that really wasn't going anywhere. And we have to continue to work with these plans. And we have an opportunity here again. We need to find efficiencies because we cannot saddle the taxpayers, the businesses, with a 4, 5, 6, 7% increase. It's not palpable. It's not sustainable. And that's where we have to mitigate and find out what our true priorities are. And the city is not falling apart at the seams. Our administration is doing a pretty good job of keeping us together infrastructure-wise.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Mayor O'Shaughnessy.
In November of this year, maybe it may creep into December, the province will be releasing infrastructure dollars to the municipalities. For how they're going to be done is application-based or whether they're going to be grant-based, we're just not sure yet. That would just come out in the last week or so. So therefore, by those infrastructure dollars going out, this is for the federal government, the provincial government, and the municipality. This should cut down the numbers in our long-term financial plan. It showed high increases in about the first 2 or 3 years, and then after that, you would start to see a reduction in the number coming down. So quite possibly the infrastructure dollars, which is going to be done over 10 years, gives us the opportunity and maybe even the possibility of lowering those numbers considerably by utilizing the grant money that we will receive through the infrastructure.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. Councillor Clement.
Yes, thank you. I don't believe that our long-term financial plan contributed to the level of tax increase of this year, Mr. Hale. I think that it was more complicated than that, in that we had struggled with assessment and the money that we owed back for the large properties in our industrial park. So I think we had bigger challenges this year. The other challenge we had was in previous years, we were not fully responsible in terms of the level of taxation. We were not hitting an inflation rate, and so we were falling behind. And let no one tell you that we're not falling behind. We have backlog that's documented. Now, the long-term financial plan is a living document. This means that it should not sit on a shelf and gather dust. It means that we need to take it out every year, a couple of times a year. We need to use your word, use some wiggle room, analyze it, shift it around, adapt it to the current situation. So, yes, it's a living document. It needs to be reviewed. We don't necessarily need to stick to the rates that are there now because it has to be adapted to the situation as we move forward.
Thank you, Councillor Clement. I saw some head shaking going on there. Mr. Mayor.
You know, the thing is, when we get into taxation, we can draw straws from anywhere and we can debate each one of them individually. But one of the things that we have to understand, and you know, both Councillor Clement and Murphy, I do know that we all try, all of council, to reduce the budget as far as we can to lessen the tax burden. But then again, let's just take a look at what happened in the last month. Councillor Murphy, you had mentioned, I think in a previous debate, or you had mentioned someplace, it might not even have been a debate, you may have mentioned in a discussion with me, where you had moved the motion to take $350,000 out of this year's budget for the Brownsville Reserve. Mm-hmm. You moved that motion, and that's great. But what did you vote for 2 meetings ago? You voted to put $400,000 to $500,000 back into the reserve in next year's budget. So, you know, you can take it out, you can put it back in. We also have the issue in regards to the wage increases in the budget last year that were in the budget for the first year. Is you voted to take that money out of the budget.
Yes.
We all know that the increases that were passed on to our employees, we now have to go back and put it back in. But this time, we have to put it in twice.
Because we were tasking administration, we were trying to task administration into doing their jobs and finding the savings that we were looking for. Yes, it is ultimately our job, but with that said, we can go to administration and say, we need revenue. This tax increase, like they came to us this year at 8%, is not palpable.
Well,
so we have to go back.
How'd that work out?
We ended up getting it under 4 through a lot of hard work and 5 months of meetings.
Yeah, but you put it back in for this year. For next year.
It
You're
was the
spending and
negotiated
putting
contract.
money
We
into
didn't have a
next
choice.
year. Okay, if
I-
that's your
I-
reasoning.
The contract was
I agree,
negotiated, and
I
we had to
agree
put
with
the
Mr.
funding
Mayor
back.
on this. There is inconsistency here. And it's a bit of a shell game to say we're going to put it in this year and take it out this year. Let's take a look at a long-term financial plan. Let's try and look beyond 4 years of a council term and plan over a longer period of time. It makes more sense. That's what families do when they budget for their homes. They don't just plan for 1 year at a time. They look at the mortgage, they look at the car payment. I mean, I know that this
And
is
they also
a,
cut where they need to cut.
yeah, and what significant cuts did you make in the budget this year, Councillor Murphy?
The ones I attempted, they just didn't pass.
They were
I can
not
accept
si-
that
They
and
were
move
not
forward.
significant.
Some were.
They were not significant enough to bring our rate down to where it had to be,
Well,
according to you.
It's like a
So,
thousand drips,
you know-
death by 1,000 drips. If you find, say, 10 different savings at $50,000, all of a sudden you're almost at 1% of your
You know,
taxes.
I spent
But we
that
couldn't do
whole
that.
budget process voting for budget cuts, and I agreed with a lot of those budget cuts, by the way, but they were so small. They didn't get us to where we need to be. Because again,
when
we're
you
not
add them up,
looking
they will.
we're not looking at a long-term plan. We're just going one budget, 1 year at a time, and that's not the way to do business.
Thank you very
They're
much.
not cuts, they're adjustments.
Thank you for the debate on this question. Very important one. I can appreciate it. Our next question is from Nick Seabrook of the Seaway News. Nick.
My question is for Councillor Clema. Last night at the council meeting, it was asked, what is Cornwall's main tourism attraction? Now, we often celebrate that we're located right along Highway 401, just an hour away from Montreal, an hour south of Ottawa, a couple hours from Kingston. But how do you bring people off of that highway and into Cornwall to spend their dollars here?
It's our waterfront. Like, when that question was asked at council last night, I wanted to say it's our waterfront, it's our bike path. We need to have better signage on, of course, the 401. We also need to highlight our downtown area. You know, presence along the 401 is important to show that Cornwall is here. But we need to let people know off the highway that there is a downtown, that there's a unique soul to Cornwall, that we actually have two downtowns. We have Le Village and we have downtown, and they're connected, and then we have this beautiful waterfront. So it's about, you know, social media, it's about getting the message out. We're doing a lot of good things in tourism, but we need to do more. We need to do more signage on the highway, and we need to bring people into the downtown core and to our waterfront, because I think our number one asset, it's our waterfront.
Thank you, Councillor Clement. Ms. Spahich, to you.
Well, if you want to bring in some tourists, you want to bring in people, let's clean up our municipality. We'll start with our streets. And I say that over and over again because the question was put to me, what about your taxes for the infrastructure? Yes? Well, how about we take a look and see how much money we have in the reserve and where we're going to get this money? Now, we start building on our streets and we start looking at, I know I've been working very hard on our Montreal, the furniture store, Poirier. And I know that the bylaw officer should be on that, and I am going to further it furthermore if need be, because that's a hazard. And you know what? If the safety is not of our residents, why should we work so hard to bring in more people when we can't even take care of a dump site, which is a second dump site, which is creating a problem, and is showing by our papers that, hey, we've got to do something. But you know what? We're all here, and I'm working on it, believe me. For that, I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Spahich. Councillor Murphy, the question to you.
Thank you very much. It would be nice if our waterfront was our number one tourist attraction, but if you look at an economic driver, it's the Benson Center. Talk to the hotels, talk to the restaurants. What brings in revenue to the city? It's the Benson Center. But that can change. But that's where we need to partner and acquire the waterfront and have the opportunity to grow our waterfront the way the residents want it to be grown, so we can make the waterfront the number one attraction. But as it stands right now, unfortunately, it's not there. Do people come for our waterfront to stay? Maybe. Do they spend within the city? Somewhat. But again, the Benson Center and all the attractions that go there for all the different events, sporting and arts and otherwise that go there, they generate the hotel rooms. They generate the restaurant meals and the revenue that helps our economy go.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Mayor O'Shaughnessy.
God forbid I got to agree with Councillor Murphy.
It happens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
No, certainly what attracts, the biggest attraction, I do believe, it also is the Benson Center. I do believe the Aquatic Center also plays some sort of a role in that for swim meets where you bring them. We also had this year baseball. The baseball diamonds here, we had teams from all over the province of Ontario. So, rather than just say the Benson Center, I'd like to say our sports programs that are offered. And by the way, they're not offered by the City of Cornwall. They're offered by the residents that put these teams together, that puts the leagues together, and does it. It's not the city. It is the people of the City of Cornwall that operate that. Where we play a role is we offer reduced rates, subsidized rates at the Benson Center, the Aquatic Center, and things like that. Clearly, the Benson Center, I would have to say, is the biggest draw for the most mainstay. Because if you remember the discussion last night when that question was posed, that discussion was around the hotel tax. And so if you're looking at a return to the hotels for charging that tax and remit to the city, it certainly has to be our sports programs and our sports facilities.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate that. Thank you.
And I'm glad Mr. Mayor brings up that because, and I've been fortunate enough over my several years involved in the community, born and raised here, I've been able to be a part of some amazing events. 2 Fred Page Cups, the RBC Cup. I was on the committee that helped raise the local funds for the Benson Center before I was on council. I was in private industry at the time, working in a management position. But it's taken those opportunities, and we can continue to do that. And earlier in my opening remarks, I mentioned about the Arts Center having a vested interest as well, and that's where it comes from. The sports community continues to impress and attract events. The arts community does the same thing. Now they need to come together and work for the Arts Center to make that an attraction in the city as well, but it's up to the artist to do it.
This is a great argument to have in terms of how many assets we actually have in our community. I'm reading this great book that was recommended. It's called 13 Ways to Kill a Community. It's a really cool book by Doug Griffiths. And he says that one of these communities, what they did was they made a list of all the great assets and then a list of all the challenges. They had the community make up that list and make up the list of challenges. And then they just sort of said to the community, okay, what do we do with this? What do we do with the great assets, and what do we do, and how do we tackle the challenges? So I'd be more interested in knowing what everybody else thinks about what the number one asset is. I think we need to figure that out and get some consensus and move forward.
Ms. Spahich.
Again, I have to continue repeating. In order to move forward, let's clean up our debris. That's our responsibility. Let's go to the bylaw officer. It's his job. Now listen here. I'm going to give you an example. If you're parked on the boulevard, someone's going to send you the bylaw officer. You're going to get a ticket. You'll be fined. Well, now why is that debris taken over the sidewalk, the fence, which again, those rods are dangerous if you're walking there, and it's really not on their property, it's on city property. The bylaw officer should be out there doing something, and if they don't, I will take care of it. For that, I thank you.
Okay.
By the way, one of the gems that none of us has mentioned up to now is NAV Center as well, and they've done a very good job partnering with community groups and within the city itself to bring events to the city, and that's what we need. We need more of that. We need more events here. We had a boxing event that was fairly well attended for only a week's promotion. That's on the promoter, not the city, but it was well attended. We need events here. Look at the Wiggles. You can't get a ticket for the Wiggles in this town. That's awesome. We need more of that.
Does anybody on the panel have Wiggles tickets?
For
a few seconds, Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
For the fear of having to agree with Dave again, I'll have no further
Get
comment.
used to it.
We have
Thank you.
lots of assets in this community.
Well, it's obvious, Councillor Clement, you're right. We do have lots of assets, and I thank you for your comments on that question. We're going to move down to Bill Kingston from Cornwall Newswatch for our next question.
And this question is directed to Councillor Bernadette Clement. The city pays for consultants for information, sometimes twice, as the city is doing its second study on a new fire hall. It holds public information sessions where the turnout could be described as lacking at times. It holds online surveys, cutting out a segment of the population without internet or computer access, yet we keep hearing again and again about more feedback and dialoguing around the council table. With a little less about talking and more doing, what would you do to make sure the wheels of municipal government turn more quickly?
That comes back to what I was talking about earlier in terms of the ward system, it being that discussion being a symptom of not being responsive to residents. So we have a plan that we've been waiting, I don't know why, to put in place, where we will respond to resident issues and track them. We have the infrastructure in place, we just haven't done it. So it's about getting things done. And in terms of engagement, I really think the council should be more accessible. You know, we have council meetings with these agendas that nobody really understands and that are not really inviting to the public. I think we should make ourselves more accessible and more allowing the public to come to council meetings and actually speak to us around the table. So opening that up and having more engagement. And I think that the more people feel engaged with their council, the more we're going to get feedback in all kinds of more innovative ways that we can dream up. So it's about engaging, it's about opening up council and having people speak to us and rather than us speaking at them at those council meetings that seem very closed to the average person.
Thank you, Councillor Clement. Thank you very much. Question now goes to Ms. Spahich.
Well, consulting is fine, you know, for the first time. But if you didn't get it right the first time, why would you want to call it in a second time another consulting? Where again, you're costing the taxpayers money. Where is all this money going anyways? Ask yourself the question. If you're going to hire a consultant, make sure you have the right one and pay him well and get over it. And then you call back another consultant or the same one. And what do you have as a result? You're still right back to square one. So there's no end to what if and what you're going to be doing. You've got to start somewhere and you've got to stop. And it's not repeating itself because it is all about duplications. For that, I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Spahich. To you, Councillor Murphy.
Thank you very much. First of all, we're supposed to be governed by Robert's Rules of Order at Council, so we haven't followed them in the last 4 years. Why would we start now and do that next term? But I do believe that a good leader and a good mayor would be able to, with the council, press forward, lead that charge. A mayor should be leading the charge to move forward on these projects with administration as quickly as possible and engage council more often, not just every second and fourth Tuesday of the month and throw in an odd PAC meeting, but more opportunities to get together, to have dialogue. And you don't need to do it as a large group. You don't need to, because you can't without the clerk and then it becomes an official meeting, but you can have one-on-one consultations with the councillors. Bring them into the office, have that conversation. Where are we headed? And then you bring it to open council, then you have that conversation all over again so everybody hears the same thing.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Mayor O'Shaughnessy.
I've listened to 3 answers, and I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know where and how it pertains to the question. Could you please read the question to me
I
again?
said, with all the dialoguing that City Council does, and you, the mayor by extension, what would you do to make sure that the wheels of government turn more quickly, that you do more as a government during your term instead of just talking to the public constantly?
Okay, but where does it come in about the fire hall study and the consultant reports, or like?
You're doing a study, you're constantly going back to the public, you're doing studies, and obviously a study by a consultant is going to gauge the public as well by extension.
Okay, thank you. One of the things that as far as engaging the public, when we do waterfront study, all right, we're going through that process right now. The residents of the city of Cornwall are stakeholder. You are very important. What do you want to occur on your waterfront? Certainly we have a consultant that comes in, organizes that, presents it in the proper manner and presents it back to council. But they also go back to the waterfront committee. They address the stakeholders, people that may have a separate interest into the waterfront. So if that was done by city administration, first thing we would hear is, oh no, I didn't say that. That wasn't true. That, you know, I don't want that. That's a city administration doing that. That's not what you do. You get consultants. These consultants are professionals that come in that may have worked on, like in Toronto on their waterfront, Brockville on their waterfront, Kingston on their waterfront. These are professionals. We don't have that expertise on staff. So they come in, we want to know what the public says. So if you're calling dialogue a bad thing, it just goes against everything that they've said previously about wanting to hear from the public. And that's what dialogue does. The thing with the consultants, it is done independently and there is no ambiguity on
Thank-
what is
Thank
actually
you,
done.
Mr. Mayor. Appreciate
I
that.
wanna-
One thing I would say
a
about
couple of
the-
moments to debate this. Go ahead, Councilor Murphy.
Thank you very much. One thing I would like to reiterate too, there are times when if you want senior levels of government funding, you need a consultant. Those are the times that we must go out and get a consultation with a recognized official for those, and then we can tap into senior levels of government funding. It was the same for many of our large-scale projects. So to say that we're going to do away with consultants, it's never going to happen, because then we won't be able to tap into the federal and provincial grants that are there.
The problem with consultations and plans is if they sit on a shelf and get dusty. So the way to get those done is to tie them to a budget item. If you don't tie your solid waste management plan, your bike and pedestrian master plan to a budget item, it's just going to gather dust. So the point is, at the beginning of a term, there should be team building. There should be a setting of priorities. We're not always going to agree. Of course, you can see us up here disagreeing, but we can come together on 3 or 4 points, and then we have the plans to support that, and you tie it to a budget item. It's always about whether you're going to invest or not. Or not, then say so and put it aside. But if it's a plan that we've paid for and we consider it to be a priority, then we tie it to the budget and we go.
But then again, that's not always the case. A lot of these studies are done earlier in a process when you're done because of government grants. Although there may be no money available tomorrow, you must be shovel ready when dollars become available from the federal and provincial government. If your study is not done, if your environmental assessment is not done, if all of these things are not completed, guess what? They're going right by you. The money is going to someplace else. So there is an importance. You may have 3 or 4 projects. Marlow is a prime example. We're ready to go with stage 2 or the second part. What are we waiting for? We've got the consulting done. We've got it all done. What are we waiting for? We're waiting for federal and provincial dollars. If we are not ready, when these grants become available through the Infrastructure Canada project that I talked about earlier, guess what? We're going to lose up. Guess where it's going? On your tax bill.
Les, my turn. I agree with you.
We have a few seconds left. Ms. Spahich, the last comments for you.
Yes, my question is to Mr. O'Shaughnessy. How many consultants do we need in order to get the work done?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, you only need one consultant, or one consulting firm, not one consulting, but a firm is usually the ones that do it. One.
And
Yeah.
how many times would we use it before we come up with a solution, before we have to go back and rehire them a second time?
Oh, that's going to depend on a lot of things. If you take a look at our fire master plan, legislation has changed. Things have changed. It was taken from information from 2012. We've got over some hurdles with it, but there's still a few more. But then again, it's outdated. The Waterfront Development Committee or whatever are doing a study right now, or they're spearheading a study. I think the other one is 8 or 9 years old. I'm not quite sure. But these things have to be updated on a regular basis. Airport, we just did one on the airport. Nothing is happening right now. Is something going to happen? Not quite sure. We've done one for the fire hall. You had mentioned earlier there was 2 studies done for the fire hall. I'm only aware of the one. I'm not saying that you're wrong.
2010.
Yeah, I wasn't there. So 2010, but we're now 2018.
But if we're not
but
setting
even our fire
priorities-
master plan, it was to use the 212 data. But I think a lot of the things that are occurring right now is the city had to make a decision of whether they wanted a 3-station or a 2-station model. Council has decided on a 2-station model, and there have been public meetings as early as last week, where the public had an opportunity. It's going in your neighborhood. You want to know what's going on. You want to know.
We have just a few seconds, Mr. Mayor.
We need to set priorities. Otherwise, all those plans just sound like a big list of things that we haven't gotten done. So we need to set priorities, and we need to do that at the top of a term. And then we tie those plans to those priorities. It's fine to wait for grants, but we shouldn't just be waiting. We should be setting priorities and moving forward with what we can do now. Priorities, 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 planning, 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 right at the top of a term.
And don't wait to put those priorities in order.
I have another question for
I'm
Mrs.
sorry, Ms. Spahich, we do have to end the questioning on this. I appreciate your candor on these candidates on this question. But we have to move on. So thank you very much. Thanks to the panel for our questions. Round of applause for our media panel and the questions they've asked. We're going to have to take a quick break, and we're going to be getting questions from the audience. So Candidates, get ready to be inundated with those questions, and we'll be back with the 2018 mayoral candidate debate here on Your TV in just a few moments. Thank you, and welcome back to the 2018 Municipal All-Mayoralty Candidates Debate, hosted by the Cornwall and Area Chamber of Commerce, right here on Your TV. I'm your moderator, Bill Hallman, and this is the time in the debate, as everybody gets back to their seats, that we're going to answer questions from the audience. However, we do have some guidelines that will be enforced. So from questions from the floor, ladies and gentlemen, please state your name. You'll have 30 seconds to pose your question, which will be enforced. Direct your question to a specific candidate, and your question must be specific to this upcoming election. We will then have that candidate, we'll have 1 minute to respond, and depending on the question, we may have a few moments to debate that, depending on the question. All right? So we're going to start my right in the House, and if we can please have the first question.
Test. Hi, my name's Tyler. I'm, I think, the youngest person in the room. And so I was very disappointed with the answer for what Cornwall's biggest asset is. Cornwall's real biggest asset is its location. The Benson Center and the Aquatic Center. Montreal, Ottawa, Kingston can do those better. We need our own identity. As Mayor mentioned, SDNG has its own campaign for where Ontario started. I want to know, specifically directed towards Councilman Murphy, what kind of initiatives do you have in mind to cultivate Cornwall's unique identity, be it through the waterfront, through Cornwall's unique history with the Seaway Valley, or other ideas?
Thank you very much for the question, and it is a good question, because I think what we have to do is, first of all, acquire the waterfront, and then we can move forward with the waterfront, and we can build a waterfront that Cornwall can be proud of with consultation. And when I say build, I don't mean condos. I mean a boardwalk. I mean a bike rental shop, a boat rental shop, things like that. that would draw tourism revenue to the city. And we can continue. Our dragon boat race is a good idea. Let's talk to community groups. Let's have a volunteer center, which we discussed at another debate. Let's get a volunteer center together so we can coordinate efforts and then get bigger and better events together built from within. Why don't we have those races a couple of times a year instead of once a year? Let's work with the volunteers. Let's do that. Let's attract. And again, the Arts Center can be a big gem as well. But again, the arts community has to be involved with it. And if they are, it can become what it is meant to be. But they need to be involved. The city should not be the one spearheading this arts center. I'll continue to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. We'll take another question on the other side, please.
Good evening. Thank you for being here tonight. Mayor O'Shaughnessy, this question is for you. Based on your time and the knowledge that you have, as far as jobs goes, what 3 things can you bring to the table that are going to bring jobs to Cornwall?
You want me to be honest, or do you want me to start grasping at straws? Because that's where I would be going. What City of Cornwall does, what politicians do, both in City of Cornwall and every other municipality in the province of Ontario, in Canada, and probably over the world, is that we try to create the atmosphere and the public or the private sector creates the jobs. In the City of Cornwall, we have been investing in our infrastructure. We are looking now at expanding our industrial park, although nothing has been finalized on that. We're still going through environmental assessments. As far as politicians creating jobs, we create the environment, and just based on what has happened with Leclerc, just based on the fact of ExploreNet, companies that have came to the City of Cornwall, whether it be for our bilingual community, whether it be for the infrastructure that is available to them, we've done quite well. So,
thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's your time. Thank you very much for the question. Other side.
My name is Ed Allard, and I have a question for Bernadette. Now, Bernadette, both you and David Murphy, over the course of the evening, have referred to this as a rather fractured council.
Speak up, please.
Pardon me?
Speak up.
Yeah. Both you and David have referred to this as a rather fractious council.
Yes.
Okay. What would you do to improve that?
Mm-hmm. So right at the beginning of a term, a mayor has to be able to bring people together and have team building. It's important. What we've seen in the last 4 years is 10 different people moving in 10 different directions. And the role of a mayor is to spark and attract investment, clearly, but also to work with a team and create that team approach. In team building, you're not going to get everybody agreeing. You're not. But you have to bring people together, set some common priorities, and if you have at least a good majority of people who want to move forward on those priorities in the right direction, in the same direction, then you're going to do it. You're going to move forward. But you have to do that in the first 3 months of a term. You have to team build, you have to do your team approach, you have to do that fast. You can't let fracture set in. That's what happened in this last council.
All right, thank you. We'll go to our next question.
Good evening. My name is Marcel. My question is directed to Bernadette, if I may. And you've spoken quite eloquently in regards to consultants and reports and acting upon them. But most recently, you supported a staff recommendation to undertake a $250,000 study of the turning circle on Brookdale. This circle has seen less than 5 accidents of minor nature in the last year. The creation of a roundabout in the neighboring municipalities cost $1.25 million, and it was a small project.
Please get to your question.
Yes, my question is, if elected, would you support a study and making the reconstruction of Brookdale a priority?
The reconstruction of Brookdale is a priority. The traffic circle is now a dead issue. The council voted it down. Sometimes you get where you want to go and sometimes you don't. But the traffic circle is done at this point. The reason that I voted for the traffic circle is because it's one of the few left in the province. And we were being told that eventually this was going to have to change. We were also being told that if we had the study done and were ready to go, we would get the grants from the government to move forward, get it done, and catch up to where everybody else is in Ontario. That's why I voted for it. But you know what? Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, and you move forward. Council made that decision, you go forward. So I'm not bringing that back up.
Thank you, Councillor. Next question.
My name is Ken Smith. My question is directed to Councillor Clement. Since the election of Jerry Parisian as the city's first full-time mayor in 1974, the residents of Cornwall have become accustomed to having full-time mayors who are readily accessible, and the remuneration has been adjusted accordingly so that it is full-time remuneration. Why are you breaking that practice by remaining part-time as the executive director of the legal clinic, if elected as mayor, when you could obtain a leave of absence?
So there have been mayors who have done part-time employment. Brian Sylvester was such a mayor. Ed Lumley was such a mayor. Phil Poirier was such a mayor. They all did work that was in addition to the work that they did as mayor. But guess what? Working at the legal clinic makes me a better mayor. Why? Because it connects me to this community. It's what brought me to this community 27 years ago, and it's what I still love to do. Now I'm going to reduce that. I'm going to go to part-time. For the first time in 27 years, I'm going to go part-time at the legal clinic, and I'm going to be a full-time mayor. Because you know what? A mayor, it's not just about sitting in a chair for 37.5 hours in a week. It's a full-time job, and it's what I've done for the last 12 years as a councillor and a full-time lawyer. I'm going to continue to be full-time mayor. I'm going to continue, and I'm going to be able to do it. And I want to stay close to the community, and my job at the legal clinic does that. But I will go part-time there. I will be at City Hall on a regular basis.
Thank you, Councillor.
And I will be a full-time mayor. I just really want to answer that question.
I know.
Sorry, Bill.
We'll go to our next question. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Mike, and I'll try to keep my question short if I can. As a business owner and running corporations within the city of Cornwall, what I've seen over the last 4 years in other councils is the continuing tax increases. I'd like to ask, it's a multi-pronged question that I'd like to ask. The awareness of people having, that the city of Cornwall has one of the highest commercial tax mill rates in the province, and how the council is going to address that.
Sorry, can you get to your question and direct it to a certain councillor, please?
Okay, I'm directing the question to both councillors and the mayor that have sat, that, especially through the debates on the budget. My question is, how do you support, at first, an 8% tax increase, which is almost 24 to 28% to the tax community, or to the business community, and how do you expect businesses to survive in the city of Cornwall when we have the downloading from the province and the federal infrastructure changes and everything else that have been put onto the backs of the businesses?
Thank you for your question. I'll direct that with the mayor to answer that.
Who supported an 8% tax increase?
Well, that's the question he's asking. If
Nobody supported an 8% tax increase.
There were some councillors that were ready to pass it when it was at 8%.
Nobody, it never went to vote. Nobody, as far as I know, remember, and I was there, nobody supported, that I know of, an 8% tax increase.
There was some lobbying for a 6% tax increase.
That's not what the question, Dave. The question was 8.
All right, well, there was some lobbying for 6 that maybe the questioner was not aware of.
Is there anybody on the panel who would support an 8% increase in taxes?
No, and I would never lobby for a 6% or a 5%, which has been done by members on this stage. And I would never do that.
It never went to a vote. Why are you saying this? I agree with Mr. Mayor on this.
Because you knew you wouldn't have the support.
Where was the 8% vote?
Ask the councillors who you tried to lobby for a 6% increase. Because if they'd have said yes, you would have said yes as well. And I would never do that.
In the interest of time, Ms. Spahich, I have 30 seconds. Where would you go with your tax increase? How high is too high for you?
I would like to see our tax remain and capped at 2.5% and work from there without all these freebies. And for that, I thank you.
There you go. Thank you for your question. We'll go to the other side of the room. Our next question.
Hey guys, this is a question for the current mayor, Leslie. So over my time paying attention to politics and paying attention to local spending, I've seen the building of the Aquatic Center, which went over budget and required changes. I've seen the Benson Center being built over budget, requiring changes. What are you going to do to make sure that this arts center comes in within budget, without change, and without taking away from the community?
First of all, what we have is just a preliminary study that was done as far as renovations or changes to the Bank of Montreal building to put in the Arts Center. Once the consultant's report is done, once we have the public meetings, once the people have been able to comment on what they want to see in their art center, then at that point in time will be determined what the cost on us to proceed. I think that there should be both provincial and federal government money that goes into that bidding, and I think we have a good opportunity to get it. Then there will be a municipal portion, then a public portion. As far as cost overruns, I remember the issue. This was way back at the Aquatic Center. I was on council and called to a meeting. And to take that money to bring it down to more of a price, to a more appeasable price for building of the Aquatic Center, I think they made a big mistake. You know, they had the mezzanine that they took out. They had all of these things. And when I just got on council, it was already
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
being built. I couldn't understand why they were making the changes.
We have a moment. Go ahead, Councillor.
We did do one big project, the biggest for the city of Cornwall, which was the wastewater treatment plant, a $58 million project, which we brought in on budget. So we are capable of doing that, and we will endeavor to do that on the Arts Center. And the arts community is fundraising as we speak. There's a gala this Saturday. They've been galvanized around the location of this Arts Center. So let's see what they can do, too.
They've got $3,000 in the bank right now, but they're going to need a couple of more zeros on that to make it a reality.
So let's step up. Let's step up.
Thank you very much.
I
thank you, councillors and candidates. We're going to go to our next question. Next question.
Hi, Jason Kreitz. My question's for the mayor. Earlier you were talking about the fire master plan station relocation study. So this is going to be 4 here now in 11 years. The first 3 recommended 3 stations as the way to go. This 4th one is looking at a 2-station model that actually increases response time. So I'm just wondering if you could help me understand why it is we're going in that direction.
From what I understand as far as response times, what it will do, it may increase response times here, but still keep us within I'm going to call it the target range. But what it'll do is up in the East End, Riverdale area, and in that area, that will bring us closer to the response times, because we do have the issue in the Riverdale area from the 4th Street station getting in and also into the North End. By moving it to a location further to the north and maybe a little bit to the east will provide us, although we will be increasing times maybe in the center core or a little bit further, we will be able to meet our targets of response times.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you for
the
your
answer
question.
to the question.
We have another.
That's
we have
the
a few
answer
seconds.
to the question.
All right. Thank you for your question. We're going to move to our next question. Pat, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Kelly Bergeron. Good job, everyone. So I have a big question that's been kind of sitting in the back of my mind. We're bringing a lot of blue-collar jobs here. They're not the highest paying jobs, and from what I've heard, we can't even fill those jobs. One of my main focuses is innovation and technology. What are you planning to do, Mr. Murphy, to attract high-tech jobs to the region and create a more robust tax revenue system?
Thank you very much for the question. And there are high-paying jobs in the city of Cornwall right now in the high-skills trades that need filling as well. You are correct. They do need filling, but there are well-paying jobs already here. But to attract more, as per your question, it's an opportunity to work continually work with economic development, as they have been doing, but they need to do more. And that's where we need to, again, acquire the waterfront to grow that opportunity to Let's stay here. It's a good place to stay. Let's get the Arts Center, but the arts community's invested in it, so why not invest in the city of Cornwall? So we have to attract residents. The jobs are here. The jobs will come when the residents come, and including the high-tech sectors, and piggyback off of larger municipalities like the city of Ottawa, for instance, whenever they're looking for outlets or secondary facilities that they can use for their operations. And I think we can continue to do that with economic development.
Thank you.
High-tech jobs.
10 seconds.
Sir, high-tech jobs, high-tech companies are attracted to communities that have flash and spark. If we were to develop the Portlands with Akwesasne, show what we could do in partnership with the First Nation, I am sure that would attract attention and investors and high-tech companies that are interested in that kind of innovation.
Thank you, councillors. Thank you very much. Our next question, please.
Hi, my name is Jordan. My question is for all four of you, but especially the three who have been on council this past year.
Sorry, we need a specific counselor. Please name one. We need a specific counselor. Or a candidate, excuse me, a candidate.
Dave.
Okay. Thank you.
The question is more based on the three past councillors and mayor, because all four of you have mentioned that reaching out to the public is important and listening to the people, and that's becoming more engaged. But during the budget consultation, 90% of people suggested to get rid of what I'll call Pizzagate, or lunches at committee meetings, and council voted to keep that on. And although a small number within the large budget, council still voted to keep those lunches for committee meetings, which was $20,000.
Please
Where
ask your
90%
question.
of people voted in the budget to get rid of it, the population.
One of the things that a lot of people, they think it's feeding council with that budget, and that's not necessarily totally accurate, because we have volunteer committees. And these volunteer committees take time away from work, take their lunch hours in a lot of cases when they're attended by the volunteers to go. So we feel it's incumbent upon us to feed them, or else you wouldn't have these volunteers sitting on these committees. We tried to alter the times to make them more accessible so we don't need lunchtime or dinner time meals. And unfortunately, that's not the case for most of their schedules. So it's based on the volunteers. And could that budget be cut? Surely it can be. And fortunately, the last several meetings, we have not had 6-hour meetings at council or 5-hour meetings at council. So there is an opportunity for budget savings. But I do believe there is also a need for it for those committees that are made up fully of volunteers on their lunch hours.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I will agree with Councillor Murphy that we need to be able to provide a meal for volunteers. I also think that we should completely change our committee structure. We have far too many committees.
Thank you, Councillor.
So
Thank
we
you.
need to change
Let's
that.
go to our next question.
Good evening. My name is Jim Marshall, and I have a question for Mr. Murphy. Given that if the Arts and Culture Centre comes to fruition, most of the money will be coming from taxpayers, do we have any assurance that it will not be named after a politician living, dead, or sleeping?
Well, my first opportunity to help fundraise for the Arts Center would be to find someone that would pay for those naming rights. So if that person happens to be a past politician, then if they're paying for it, then I'm okay with that. Like the Benson Center, right? You're talking an opportunity for tens of thousands of dollars, in the hundreds of thousands in the case of the Benson Center, potentially in the Arts Center as well. And that's where the fundraising group has to get serious. It's nice to have fundraisers that raise $600, $700, $800 at a time. That's not going to cut it. We need a drive. And that drive has to be spurred by the Arts Center. And that drive has to include large-scale ticket items, naming rights, naming of the different facilities within the Arts Center. And those opportunities do exist. Now, whether that's in the corporate world or locally, I'd prefer it to be a local group that does that, but that's not always the case. We don't always have that opportunity. But I do agree with you.
Mayor?
But based on those numbers, it will not be called the Leslie O'Shaughnessy Arts Center.
Thank you very much. Let's get to our next question.
Hi, Kyle Bergeron here. My question is for Ms. Clement. You've stated that the waterfront is the best part of Cornwall. I agree. My question is, would you be willing to purchase the Domtar property if available?
Ooh, big question. You know, the Domtar property is a big issue. It just sits there, sits and takes up all that space, and by extension drags us down as a community, like so many of our brownfields do. We had an opportunity years ago, and I'm not sure where we are with that now. I do think, though, that we can play a role. Short of buying it, Mr. Bergeron, I do think that we should be calling up those owners, having them come to council on a regular basis. What are you doing with this property? What do you want? Should we look at rezoning it? What should we be doing? We should be calling them up, telling them that we want to have more control of the destiny over that waterfront, and we need to be telling them we care about this place, and we need to know that you care and that you're going to invest in it.
We have a few moments for
Wouldn't that
for
be a
rebuttal.
really good conversation to have with our school boards? They're looking to build a new super school. Wouldn't that be an amazing spot right there? To have a super school across the road on 2nd Street, attached to the sports facilities that we can partner with. And then we can build the amenity there, and you've got a super school. We don't have a whole lot of land to build that super school on.
Thank you, Councillor. We have time for one more question, so let's get to it.
My name is Tom Butkovich. A question for Bernadette.
Bernadette, you said that the budget process last year, and I think every year that I can remember, was a very tiring process. So tiring that you had sometimes no time for other work for council. They couldn't handle it. What is your plan to bring the budget process in this city under control and get it done within a reasonable time, like 2 or 3 months, like other cities do?
So the first 100 days in a mandate, you have to come together and you have to do some team building and you have to set some priorities. Once you have priorities as a team, the budget is clearer, right? That's where you tie budget items, plans to budget items. That's where you say, you know what, we can't invest in this because it's not a priority. So the first thing you do is you build a team right from the start. You set priorities and do strategic planning right away, and then you go. You have a much more effective budget process if you have a team and you have set some priorities ahead of that budget.
Thank you very much for the question. We do have time for one more question. Let's have our last question.
Thanks, Bill. This question is for Councillor Murphy. As the co-founder of a tech startup here in Cornwall and a member of the Cornwall Innovation Centre, we have seen so much great support from the Cornwall Innovation Centre, and I would like to know how you will help to continue to support the Innovation Centre, which is helping so many startups here in town.
The Innovation Center is funded partially by the City of Cornwall. I believe it's $30,000. I stand corrected, but I think that is the revenue. It might be more than that. But there's an opportunity there, and we should do that. It's growth. It's like investing in our downtowns. It's investing, and it's resulting in job opportunities, and it's resulting in successful business ventures. So we're seeing the fruits of that spending, and I think maybe we should continue it within reason. Again, it's not a blank check and here you go, but at the same time, let's stay focused, but that's good investment because it creates further investment. That's what you call good spending.
Thank you very much. And with that, I would like to thank our audience for their questions. They were excellent. We appreciate your time tonight. And thank you, our candidates, for answering the audience questions. Give yourselves a round of applause for that. Thank you very much. With that, we'll take a quick break and come back with our candidates. Oh, we're not going with the breaks. Thank you very much. We're going to go... We're on the fly here. We're going to go right to our closing remarks, and we'll have 2 minutes for the closing statements from our candidates, and we'll do this in reverse order from where we started. So we will invite Councillor David Murphy up to have our closing statements.
Thank you very much. And once again, I'd like to thank the Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event. I'd like to thank all of you for coming, taking times out of your lives and busy schedule. And thank you for being engaged. And it's good to see the community engaged like this. In door knocking, I've had the opportunity to understand some people are not as engaged, but they want to be. And I've been able to assist them in that regard. Others are engaged, and they'll continue to do so. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is David Murphy, and as I mentioned off the top, born and raised here, this is my hometown. I plan on spending my last breath in this town, and I want to help Cornwall grow to its full potential. I want it to reach its maximum potential with all sectors of the community, in industry, in private, and in retail. We can do it, but we need to be responsible and sustainable. We have to continue to have sustainable budgeting. We don't always do that. Because again, we can't keep going back to the taxpayer again and again and again. And when you, the taxpayer, tell me you've had enough, I've listened. Again, the track record is there. $250,000 traffic circle study, the spay and neutering program. You don't write blank checks for these things. When the homeowner, when there's talk of an administration coming at homeowners, or rather landlords, with a registry, so they have to pay another tax to be registered in this registry, I would never support that. Never. Because again, we're digging into the same pockets over and over, and we cannot keep doing that. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want fiscal responsibility and sustainability, I ask for your vote. Mesdames et messieurs, vote David Murphy on October 22nd. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Councillor. Next up, Nicole Spahage.
Well, I'll start in French. Alors, c'était encore été une bonne soirée ce soir avec beaucoup de questions. Je vais aller partir ce soir avec des questions peut-être pas toutes répondues, mais n'oubliez pas que les réponses ne sont pas loin. Again, I'll repeat, it's nice to have all of you out here tonight with a lot of questions. Now, we understand that all these questions weren't answered the way you wanted them. But you know, it doesn't mean that they're not going to be answered. Just keep coming back until you get the answer, because it's very important that you do get the answer for what you're asking your question for. I believe that there is going to be changes. I don't believe in high taxes. I believe we have to tighten up the belt. And that is, we have to start doing without. And when we start doing without, we get results, because we appreciate what we're going to be getting. Now, the thing is, we have so much want, and the want is so great. The question is, how much of it do we really need, and what can we afford at you, the dollar? You're the taxpayers. Now, I'm ready to say that we should cap it at 2.5% and work from there, and not more. I ask you to keep in mind when it comes October the 22nd to vote for me, Nicole Spahich. Alors, le 22 octobre, j'espère que vous allez penser de voter pour moi. Je m'appelle Nicole Spahich. Un gros merci.
Thank you, Ms. Spahich. Our next candidate with her closing remarks, Councillor Bernadette Clement.
Our summer student came back to visit me at work today. She's at York University, and she's doing well. We chatted about her studies, and she asked me about my campaign for mayor. And I can tell you all that it's been an interesting and challenging campaign so far. I can tell you that people have responded to me in different ways. Some on the basis of me being a woman of color, some on the basis of me being une francophone, and that's fine, because I am all those things. But I have to say that the vast majority of people are most interested in my 12 years as a city councillor, in my 27 years as a legal aid lawyer, and most of all, in my personal connection to all things Cornwall, to the work, to the struggle, but also to the volunteers, to the businesses, to the activities, to the fun and joy that we get to have here in our city. That student, her family wants her to come back to Cornwall one day. I want her to come back too. Just like so many parents and grandparents, they want their young people to come back. We need them, and we have to prepare a place for them. Nous devons leur faire de la place, et nous devons en attirer d'autres. That is why the role of mayor is crucial, and why leadership really matters. This election is about welcoming the future. It's about working together to make Cornwall the best place possible, with pride in ourselves and in our history. I will bring new leadership which pushes for that, and which brings a spark to the talent and potential that we already have in abundance here. For in the end, as a mayor, it's not about how many hours that you sit in the mayor's chair in a day. It's about what you do with that time. It's about the energy and vision and commitment that you bring to the task. And I will bring that commitment. On October 22nd, I'm asking for your vote. Je demande votre vote. Merci.
Thank you, Councillor Clement. And now our incumbent mayor, Leslie O'Shaughnessy, with his closing remarks.
Thank you. It's great to speak last. I have the opportunity to poke holes in everything that the other three candidates have said, but that's not what I'm going to do, because that's not what's important. I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce for organizing this event. I would also like to thank the people in the audience and those watching at home. You deserve a pat in the back and a high five for showing an interest in the future of our city as we move forward. On October 22nd, I respectfully ask for your support, and let's move forward together. Thank you, and merci.
Thank you, Mayor O'Shaughnessy. Well, we've heard from the candidates. Now it's up to you. This concludes our municipal all candidates mayoral debate. On behalf of the Cornwall Chamber of Commerce, we'd like to thank the candidates, YourTV, our local media, and you out there watching today, and of course our audience here tonight at the Cornwall Civic Complex. The public and everybody for joining us tonight. We wish you a good night, and on October 22nd, please vote. Good night.